I went to a mentalist show. At the beginning, we had to write down something that's been on our mind and a place where we would put that thing. And so I, being a genius, wrote down sexy rabbits. And what I didn't consider when I wrote that down is that that's a really interesting way to answer that question, which means my thing was going to be picked, because I'm pretty sure what happens is they look through them at the beginning of the show and pick which ones they're going to pull up. And I thought I was safe. We made it through the whole show. It turned out to be kind of like a beautiful thing about like keeping your memory. He kind of wrote it based on his grandparents who both had Alzheimer's. And then the last 3 people to get called up on stage were me and 2 other people.
So is it framed as him like reading your mind and he was like, I think someone's thinking about rabbits?
No. The gag is he like pulls your card, which is in a sealed envelope.
Okay.
And he like showed me the envelope. So it's clear that like it was still my envelope, but I think it was opened and like read, basically.
Yeah.
And he pulled like 3 names out and then had us come on stage. And then he was like, okay, I want you to picture the object where you would put this thought in your mind. And I was like, all right. So I pictured my desk and I pictured my jewelry box that has Tutter from Bear in the Big Blue House on it.
Aww.
And then he was like, and I'm seeing 2 rabbits and they're making sweet, sweet love. And I was like, no, not necessarily. And then I was like, I explained that like we were doing this podcast about beauty and the first arc was about sexy rabbits. He was like, are there sexy rabbits? And then I got to explain to him, yes. And then there was a guy who farted in front of the Mormon church. He was the one after me. And then the last one was a woman who lost her father.
3 humiliating things.
We were the funny bits that made the smooth sailing into the nice tie it all together at the end, talking about like losing someone and having memories of them and blah, blah, blah.
Speaking of publicly humiliating ourselves,
welcome to Informed Attraction, a podcast hosted by 1 tall drink of water and 1 little glass of water about how fat people can sometimes be dancers.
I love it. I don't know what that has to do with anything yet, because I don't know jack about shit when it comes to today's topic, but I agree that fat people can sometimes be dancers.
They can be. This is the first of a 3-part series about the funny fat man trope in media. And the question that prompted this series for me was, why is the funny fat guy trope so prominent in media? And I did a little bit of research on this topic, and the answer is ultimately kind of boring. It's anti-fat bias, the dehumanization of fat bodies as a punchline. We see that with characters like Fat Bastard in Austin Powers, or all of the fat jokes around Peter Griffin and Homer Simpson. And I searched for some of the earliest depictions of this trope in media, this trope of the bumbling fat guy. Some claim that the character Heracles Bibax in plays by Aristophanes are an example of this trope, but I couldn't really find direct source material. But yeah, so some people were like, oh, Heracles Bibax is the first example of the funny fat guy trope. But then I saw an image of a sculpture that supposedly depicted this character, and he wasn't fat, he was just really muscular. And then people were like, this is supposed to be funny, but then other people were like, no, this doesn't make any sense, like this isn't a funny situation depicted in this sculpture.
This is a character from The Frogs. Is that the play?
I think so.
I don't know The Frogs very well. There's a musical based on it, but all I know about it is there's lots of scenes between Heracles and Dionysus.
And then that also came up where some people were like, oh, Dionysus is depicted as fat, but not in the way that I was thinking of as this like Peter Griffin kind of character.
I think that also like there's this vase, whatever, of an actor dressed as Xanthias from The Frogs. He's like an old round man in this vase. And then it's funny that you say that, because then the statuette of Heracles that's next to this man in this vase, next to Xanthias is he's very svelte.
Yeah, and that was also what I was finding. So I would say that in doing my historical research, I think the earliest depiction of this trope that I can verify and that I really feel confident in saying is a depiction of this trope is probably John Falstaff in Shakespeare's Merry Wives of Windsor and other plays. You can probably speak to John Falstaff as a character better than me with your theater background, where, he's fat, gluttonous, but witty. And his whole thing is he's sort of this comic relief through being sort of a buffoon.
Yeah. Not to actually, Aubrey, but Falstaff first appears in Henry IV Part 1, which is thought to be written before Merry Wives of Windsor and was also published before Merry Wives of Windsor. I tend to think of Falstaff as like the levity in the history plays, which like when I've seen them staged have not necessarily always been boring, but have been rather dry reads from my perspective. And Falstaff is sort of the humorous character in the Henry history plays, and then also appears in Merry Wives of Windsor, which I saw once referenced on Reddit as Merry Wives of Windsor is the Minions movie to the Henry's Despicable Me, which I thought was a fun comparison. Falstaff is sort of in the same way that in a lot of Shakespeare plays, there's like a fool, so that there's like comic relief and King Lear and everything's falling apart. There's still like a fool. And I think Falstaff functions the same way, but there is more bits about him being like a drunken, slovenly party dude. And he's specifically written as fat. What I will say, sorry, I'm back to the frogs for a second. The looking at the stuff in the frogs, it does seem like Dionysus in the frogs is canonically described as fat in the play. I cannot find the direct quote at this point, but there's several. Dionysus is often portrayed as fat in Greek plays in general, but very specifically, whatever source you found that described Heracles as fat is crazy, because the whole point is that he's like svelte and muscular in comparison to like fat, silly Dionysus.
Yeah, no, I literally had found a source that was like, this is a statue of this character, and it's meant to be humorous because he's fat.
Okay, well, they're not to maybe sorry if this is like a Greek expert that I'm like dunking on, but I think that's no, because like not to be insane, but like Heracles and Hercules, same guy.
Yeah.
So no, Heracles is not supposed to be fat in the frogs, unless I'm insane. But Dionysus, I think, actually is.
I took that with a grain of salt, because I think that people just want to attribute every trope to having started in ancient Greece. Yes. And I actually think it's a little bit more modern than that. I think that there are probably characters in ancient Greek plays who were like mocked for their weight or mocked for being gluttonous, but I was thinking specifically as the trope of a bumbling fat guy specifically.
Well, and it's funny because I would say that like in the frogs, I don't think Dionysus is really portrayed as like bumbling. He's sort of portrayed as like effeminate and hoity-toity, but it's more like regal fat guy.
Yeah.
Fat king as opposed, because he's a god. So like fat god as opposed to funny fat guy.
They're all fat kings to me.
And I hate fat people. And we know this to be true.
So anyway, I think that for me, an episode about how fat people have just been shit on historically was not super interesting. And it's also something that I have talked about at length professionally. So I rather got really interested in the real life fat men who have created a name for themselves by being funny fat men, but rather than necessarily being caricatures and stereotypes of funny fat men, acted as leading men.
Oh, so Aubrey, we're going to talk about leading men who are fat and not who I thought of when you said fat bastard from Austin Powers, which was Ben Stiller in a fat suit at the end of Dodgeball, shaking his titties around. That's not what we're going to talk about?
We could do an entire episode where we just go through every actor who's been in a fat suit and I explain why it's bad.
Because even as a child, that Dodgeball scene at the end, it's the last scene of the movie. Yeah. It's like that epilogue scene. It's a little much.
I don't understand why when every actor is put in a fat suit, their first instinct is to dance.
Hey, how did you open this episode, Aubrey? Did you not say sometimes fat men can be dancers? Boom! Gotcha!
I'm roasted. Lib is owned.
I'm in Aubrey's comments roasting her right now. It's live roasting. I'm a reply guy, but in real time. Okay, I'm sorry. Talk about what you want to talk about.
So that puts us in what I'm calling a two-part profile. The first one is going to be on Roscoe Fatty Arbuckle, who's arguably the first example of the funny fat man in film, and then Chris Farley, who I think is an embodiment of this trope of the funny fat guy, and someone who I have incredibly fond feelings for. Genuinely, the tagline of this series could really just be, why was Chris Farley hot? Why didn't Hollywood let us think he was hot? And why does Hollywood try to force us to think Brad Pitt is hotter than Chris Farley, despite the fact that Chris Farley is a better man than Brad Pitt could ever be?
Is now a good time for me to complain about Jack Black and the Holiday, or will that be more appropriate during the Chris Farley episode?
So the third part of this series is going to be exploring this concept in more depth and a little bit of a retrospective, where we explore the funny fat man in a modern lens through Jack Black's performance in The Holiday, which is a film where he gets really reinvented as a more stereotypical leading man persona. And even though I do think he's charming in that movie, it is possibly the least attractive character he's played on screen, because it really takes away a lot of the Jack Black isms that make him so endearing in his other roles. And that part is going to bring up this idea about media thinking that men can only either be funny or attractive, and it has a difficult time reconciling the two.
That's why they wouldn't let Ryan Gosling be funny for such a long time, even though he's so funny, because he's hot, so he can't be funny. Those are the rules, Aubrey.
Let him. I always love how Chris Evans' beginning in Hollywood was in Not Another Teen Movie, which is a hilarious comedy.
He's so funny, and then they're putting him in all of these bullshit dramas now, where he's just like, I'm an action hero with Ana de Armas, and I'm like, I'm gonna eat you. But not in a nice way.
Let's put Chris Evans back in funny comedies. I think that he deserves
All of them.
it. Yes.
I think all of these men are more funny than they are good actors, but because they're good looking, they're like, okay, I should say that I think comedy is harder than drama in a lot of ways, but like they want to put them in these like serious action films and be serious dudes when like the greatest thing that Ryan Gosling has ever done is, I was going to say it's Crazy Stupid Love, but that might be too controversial, is Ken.
Yeah.
But also Lars and the Real Girl is also hilarious because he's just like, they let him be this awkward nerd. This is my Ryan Gosling rant. They let him be this awkward, nerdy guy, even though he's Ryan Gosling and he's obviously, okay, anyway. Can we talk about Fatty Arbuckle now?
We are. So,
Yay!
Roscoe Conkling Arbuckle, otherwise known as Fatty Arbuckle, was an American silent film actor, director, and screenwriter. He was a mentor to famous figures in the silent film industry like Charlie Chaplin, Bob Hope, and Buster Keaton, and he is directly responsible for Buster Keaton having a film career.
I don't know who any of those guys are, Aubrey. I only watch movies with words in them, okay?
I love the silent film era. I love the movie Gold Rush with Charlie Chaplin, and I think Buster Keaton is super sexy.
To be very clear, I agree with you. I agree with you on both those fronts. But it's more fun to be like, hey, Charlie Chaplin, that guy with the Hitler mustache. So,
yeah. Imagine the influence that you have where a dictator takes your drip.
That's true. And then your hero, Michael Jordan, tried to reclaim that drip in that one Hanes ad.
I have no idea what you're referencing.
Oh, Aubrey. It seems like I get to send you something. Michael Jordan, Hanes commercial, mustache. A perfect thing for me to Google. Let me just send you an image really quick.
Oh, no.
Oh, yeah, baby.
Why did he do that?
Listen, I don't have an answer to that question. Charlie Chaplin had that mustache. Hitler took that mustache and ruined that mustache. Michael Jordan tried to bring that mustache back. I don't think he did it successfully.
Yeah. Well,
not a good enough comedian. Back to Fatty Arbuckle.
Yeah, so Fatty Arbuckle is directly responsible for Buster Keaton being in movies because Buster Keaton was a quite successful stage actor and then wanted to make the transition into film. And Roscoe Arbuckle was like, hey, be in one of my movies, and casted him in a small role in one of his films. And it was a hit. And basically, it propelled Buster Keaton into widespread fame, and he's now probably one of the most famous silent film actors of the era.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like if you are thinking about a silent film star, you are thinking about either Charlie Chaplin or Buster Keaton. And like, I could name some others if I was really. Is Greta Garbo silent films? I think yes, right? Yes, yes, yes.
Perhaps. I think she might have been in The Transition.
Or like Marlene Dietrich, I think was.
Yeah.
But if someone was like, gun to my face, name a silent film star, I'd be like, Charlie Chaplin. They'd be like, name another one. I'd be like, Buster Keaton. So if my life was in danger, that's who I would name as a silent film star.
Right. Well, and some of the most well-known bits that Chaplin and Keaton did were taken from Arbuckle. He was a huge influence on both of them.
The skinnies stealing from the fats again.
It's fat appropriation, and I'm sick and tired of it.
It is! Is it illegal and bad for me to be calling him Fatty Arbuckle? Should I be solely referring to him as Roscoe?
So he did not like to be called Fatty Arbuckle. And when people would refer to him as Fatty Arbuckle, he would say, I've got a name, you know. Or he would say, my name is Roscoe. Fans do make a distinction because Fatty does refer to the character and persona that he plays in film. But yeah, for this specific series, when I'm talking about the man himself, I'm going to try to just refer to him as Roscoe or Arbuckle.
I'm also going to try to refer to him as Roscoe because people should not be called. You know what's funny? I feel like that mostly happens to women.
Mhm.
Like how mad Kristen Stewart was about being called K-Stew. I do feel like that mostly happens. So you know what? Fatty, solidarity.
Fatty Solidarity.
No, Roscoe solidarity.
Roscoe Solidarity. And I think there is a documentary about him, and the title of it is My Name is Roscoe. So fans really are trying to reinvent his persona posthumously. So I sent you a YouTube video of just some of his most iconic clips, and it's only 2 minutes, but you can just watch the first few clips, and I'll just let you watch it, and you can tell me what you thought.
Yeah, right. I've always wanted to be someone who does live reactions, so I'm gonna practice. I once explained reaction videos to a college professor, so this is really exciting to be doing it. Okay, Aubrey, immediately you're right. Oh my god, these kicks kind of slay. Oh, love a heel click.
Yeah, look at Roscoe go.
Oh, he's so cute.
Isn't he so? I found all of the clips of him so charming and delightful. And
oh, this clip of him and Charlie Chaplin is so nice.
it is. That one gag with the rolls where he has the fork in the rolls and he's doing little dance.
Yeah.
That is actually widely attributed to Charlie Chaplin in the film Gold Rush, and it's been used throughout media. It's really famous in the movie Benny and June with Johnny Depp, but it was created by Arbuckle, and Chaplin thought, "Oh my gosh, this is so great. I want to use this in one of my films," and he used it. And I think you can see the influence he had on Keaton with that one clip where he's playing the ukulele and the house falls on him.
Mm-hmm. How old is he in most of these?
In most of these, let's see, he was born in 1887. Most of the stuff that he was doing in these clips would probably have been 1915. So
okay, so he's in his 20s or 30s?
Yeah.
Late 20s, early 30s. Okay. He looks young is why I asked.
Yeah, he definitely had kind of a baby face.
Yeah. Oh, classic man in a dress trope.
But he loved
You didn't know.
it.
You didn't know that was problematic.
I don't even think that it's like, it's so embarrassing. I'm a woman in a dress. He's slaying. But he's got swagger. He's got grace. Like,
oh, Aubrey, he played a cop. A cab. Come on.
He was actually one of his big things before he really got famous was he played a lot of cops. That was one of his characters in Keystone production films.
I see.
He was known for being agile and acrobatic, and I guess in a way that is supposed to contrast with his body because you wouldn't expect him to be agile and acrobatic.
It's so funny that you say that because the thing I was literally just thinking as you started saying that is, as someone who dated a couple guys who played rugby last year, like he just he looks like a rugby player, like a football player. And it's so interesting how like fatness is so contextual in some ways, because like you're not looking at a guy who's playing rugby and being like, I got fat ass, but because like the bit here is like laughing at someone for being fat in some of these clips. It's, you know, he is described as fat in a way that I think that men who have his body types in other contexts would not be described as fat.
Yeah. So just a little bit more broad info on Roscoe Arbuckle. He was one of the most popular silent film stars of the 1910s and one of the highest paid actors in Hollywood in this era. His 1920 contract with Paramount was for $1 million a year, which would have been the equivalent of $15.2 million a year now.
Okay, Robert Downey Jr.
Yeah, it's as much as Keanu Reeves got for John Wick 4.
For John Wick 4?
Yeah.
I don't know. Okay, I saw the first John Wick movie and I have not seen any since then. And so there's something funny to me about getting paid $15 million to make the third sequel to a movie.
You know what? I love the John Wick movie.
I'm sorry. I know people do. It's just, it's not my bit.
So, starting off with the life and times of Roscoe Arbuckle. Roscoe Arbuckle was born on March 24th, 1887 in Smith Center, Kansas, one of the 9 children of Mary E. Gordon and William Goodrich Arbuckle.
Hey, that's my guy! There's so many Goodriches. We're probably not related, but
there's
still!
Lots of Goodriches out there. I see your name constantly.
Yeah, but not my first name. I'm an original, baby.
You are. So Roscoe weighed 13 pounds at birth, and his father thought that he was illegitimate because he was a fat baby, and him and Mary Gordon were thin.
Oh, this baby's so fucking bad. That can't be my son. It's crazy. It's a baby.
Imagine, it's like that clip on Maury where that guy's like, that baby looks nothing like me. He looks like a baby.
Yeah.
So when this fat little baby came out, William Arbuckle basically was like, I hate this fat baby. And so he named that fat baby Roscoe Arbuckle after Senator Roscoe Conkling of New York, who was a playboy who William Arbuckle despised. So a little bit of context on who Roscoe Conkling was is he was an American lawyer and Republican politician who represented New York in the House and Senate. This was back in the days when Republicans were good.
Aubrey, are you saying Republicans aren't good now?
No, never. Please, Elon, don't come for me.
President Trump, get her.
Doge is gonna be at my door.
Just literally a bunch of the fucking Doge dogs bust down your door with like guns for hands and are like.
So Roscoe Conkling was somewhat based. He favored equal rights for ex-enslaved people and reduced rights for ex-Confederates, and he advocated for women's suffrage. He was also an avid reader of poetry and a big Lord Byron fan, and would recite Lord Byron's poetry in his speeches. However, he was notorious because he had an affair with the married Kate Chase Sprague, who was the daughter of Chief Justice Salmon P. Chase and the wife of Rhode Island Governor William Sprague IV. So, allegedly, William saw him and Roscoe with his wife while they were fucking at their summer home, and he ran after him with a Civil War era musket. So that was why he was known in media.
So what I'm hearing is he's like, if Macklemore, No Freedom Till We're Equal, damn right I support it, was also like Barry Keoghan.
Yes.
All right.
Or like Pete Davidson.
Oh, like Pete Davidson. That's actually who I wanted.
Yeah.
Whoa, Aubrey, is Pete Davidson Macklemore's Waluigi? It's holy shit.
He is.
He's Dark Macklemore.
He's Dark Macklemore.
Pete Davidson is Dark Macklemore. That's so funny. It's so funny because Macklemore is so base now, but I'll never forget. It's not his fault that the heist beat To Pimp a Butterfly at the Grammys, but I still blame him in my soul.
I listened to Thrift Shop for the first time in several years in the car the other day, and I went home and I told my husband, I was like, I just heard Thrift Shop for the first time in a lot of years, and he just immediately goes, this is fucking awesome.
It's a banger. Listen, Macklemore had some bangers. He did.
The thing with the "this is fucking awesome" in Thrift Shop is that when you listen to that song, I can see in my head how they were like, yeah, so this is the song, and they say that this is fucking awesome part, and then they're like, okay, we're gonna take that out later. Don't worry. Like that, it's really stupid. It's just a placeholder. We're gonna fill it out with something better later, and they just never did.
Aubrey, I'm gonna be honest with you. Having heard another song of his, "And We Danced," I don't think that's true because "And We Danced" is one of the craziest songs I've ever heard that's on like a real album. It isn't a like "And We Dance" sounds like it's a Lonely Island song, not a song by someone who has several Grammys for rap music.
But in the first grade, he thought he was gay.
I know every word to that song because we use it in a show that I direct.
That's incredible.
I choreographed some like very serious modern dance to "Same Love" by Macklemore.
Yeah.
And that's the legacy of Roscoe Arbuckle, may I just say. Thank you very much.
So basically, William Arbuckle hated Roscoe Conkling so much that he saw this fat little baby that his wife gave birth to, and he said, "Your name forever is now going to be Roscoe Conkling Arbuckle."
Question, Aubrey. Was he nice to his wife?
We don't really have confirmation of that. He did get another wife after his wife died, so someone loved him.
Someone loved him. Well, slash, you had like not a lot of rights as a woman during that time if you weren't married, so a lot of women just did need to be having a husband to like have money.
Yeah. So poor little Roscoe Arbuckle. Their family moves to Santa Ana, California when Arbuckle is 2, and he starts performing on stage at the age of 8. Roscoe's birth was really traumatic for his mother, and it likely resulted in chronic health problems that ended up contributing to her death when Roscoe was 11. So he started being called Fatty in school as a nickname. Shockingly, he hated it. I don't really understand why.
Kids are so creative. They just really were like, let me really think deep on this nickname. Oh, you're fat, fatty.
And basically, poor Roscoe's dad, who always hated his fat little body, refused to support him. So at the age of 11, this little fat child got odd jobs in a hotel, and he would sing while he worked.
Is this pre or post Newsies?
Let's see, this would have been...
This would have been pre-Newsies.
This would have been 1898.
So we don't know about that child labor is bad yet.
No, I mean, we just think it's folksy when little kids are working 40 hours a week as long as they're singing while they do it.
Yeah, a bunch of musical theater twinks haven't gone, what a fine life yet, so we wouldn't know that.
My happiest memory in high school is going to New York and watching Newsies on Broadway. So poor little Roscoe Arbuckle is 11 years old, and he's working odd jobs in a hotel, and he sings while he works. And by all accounts, Roscoe Arbuckle was an incredible singer. I read many accounts of people saying that had he not become a silent film actor, he probably would have been renowned as a fantastic singer. So as he's singing while he's working, there's a professional singer who's staying at the hotel that he's working in, and she invites him to perform in an amateur talent show. And this consisted of the audience judging acts by either clapping or booing. And if you were bad, you would get pulled off stage by a shepherd's crook.
Wait, that's a real thing that
Yes.
actually happened to people? I thought that was some Looney Tune shit.
Yeah,
Wait,
so
that's
people
real?
would sing and dance in talent shows, and if you cheered, you got to win. And if people booed, a shepherd's crook would pull you off stage.
We should start doing that at political debates.
We should.
Wonk, wonk, wonk. We need more sound effects in life too. I hope, this is me, this is the Looney Tunes brain. But I hope that when they pulled you off the stage, someone with a trombone went, wah, wah.
So little Roscoe sang and danced and, quote, did some clowning around, but the crook came for him as it comes for all of us.
No, not this little fat kid just getting crooked.
And so as the crook comes for him, he responds by somersaulting into the orchestra pit in a panic. But that makes the audience go wild with cheers.
I'm so sad that this happened before everyone had an iPhone.
Yeah. I would have loved to see this. This would have done the rounds.
This would have been a viral child on TikTok who then went on every daytime talk show and then got exploited by their parents for sure.
Yeah, Walmart yodeling kid. That's just a legacy started by Roscoe
You do
Arbuckle.
me, you do you.
So he won the competition, and at the age of 11 starts a career in vaudeville, and by all accounts just does vaudeville stuff for several years. His film career begins in 1909 when he briefly appeared in comedy short Ben's Kid. In that same year, he married singer Minta Durfee, who he affectionately called Minty.
Here's the thing, Minta is not a name you hear very much anymore, and Minta's not bad. Durfee, tough.
Minta Durfee?
Minta Arbuckle is a much better name. So in this one, I always say you should only change your last name if it's a better last name that you're getting out of the deal.
Mm-hmm. At their wedding reception, apparently guests teased poor Roscoe about his weight because he is fat and Minty was known for being very slender, and they jeered at him and they joked about how Roscoe's fat body would crush Minty's petite little body, and apparently this upset him so badly that they didn't consummate their marriage until a week after the wedding.
Can I say something controversial yet, Brave?
Yeah.
Okay, so as someone who is I have an athletic build, if I was filling up my Backstage.com profile.
Yes.
I have dated men of all shapes and sizes. And that is not a real thing.
Yeah.
That's not real.
Yeah.
And frankly, it's nice when you're a taller gal to date someone who is substantially larger than you, because then you don't feel so bad all the time.
Yeah, you should have been friends with Roscoe Arbuckle and been at his wedding to hype him up when all of his friends who were not real ones.
That's the thing. He's got fake people shape. I can't quote Drake. This is it's so fun to say I've got fake people showing fake love to me, but I can't say that anymore.
You can still say it.
No freedom till we're equal. Damn right, I support it. Okay, let's keep going.
So in 1913, Roscoe moves on to Universal to start starring in comedies. Arbuckle, by most accounts, was somewhere between 250 and 300 pounds, and he was self-conscious about his weight, but he refused to use it for cheap laughs like getting stuck in a doorway or in a chair.
Skinny legend, by the way.
Yeah.
Did you see the thing about, you didn't watch Super Bowl, right?
No.
So there was this thing where they put this graphic about the Philadelphia Eagles offensive line, and they are the biggest, I think the biggest O-line to ever be in the Super Bowl, and their average height is 6'6", and their average weight is 338 pounds.
Them's big boys.
So Fatty Arbuckle, or Roscoe Arbuckle, skinny legend.
Yes. Put me next to the Philadelphia Eagles, and I've found my people.
Yeah, Aubrey, sure, but you're nowhere near 6'6" there, my guy. I get where you're coming from one direction, but you're missing the vertical direction here pretty severely.
That's always been the problem with me. Another fun fact about Roscoe Arbuckle was that he was a huge fan of the pie in the face gag, and that he did the earliest known pie throw in a film in A Noise in the Deep.
Was he throwing the pie or being pied?
So this is what is so great about it. He did both.
So was it like he threw it and then it cut to him getting smooshed, or was it a wonk, like him hitting himself in the face?
It was one hand is throwing and then the other gets him in the face.
Aha. Love.
Yeah.
Cinematography.
So in 1914, Paramount Pictures made an unheard offer of $1,000 a day plus 25% of all profits and complete artistic control to make movies with Arbuckle and his frequent screen partner, Mabel Normand. And given the fact that your jaw just dropped, you know that that's an insane deal.
That's an insane deal. And also, was his writing partner a girl?
Yes, his frequent screen partner was a woman named Mabel Normand, and they basically did a lot of films where it's, little girl and big guy, and they're doing funny things together.
Good for her.
Yeah. The movies were so lucrative and popular that in 1918, they offered Arbuckle a 3-year, $3 million contract, which is equivalent to a $61 million contract in modern money.
That's like MLB baseball player money.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
So From late 1914 onward, he wrote and directed virtually all of the comedies in which he starred, including classics in the Roscoe Arbuckle canon like Fatty and Mabel Adrift and He Did and He Didn't.
This is a foreshadow, but He Did and He Didn't is a ironic title considering sort of where this story ends.
I know. Before we get to that, I do want to just say a couple more things about Roscoe Arbuckle. He was known for always keeping himself clean and neat and very fashionable. This was likely a reaction to his poverty-stricken background and also trying to fight against the stereotypical fat slob character that people would attribute to him. He also disliked swearing. He really thought that films should be family friendly and accessible to everyone. And he lived a life where he really thought that you should just be polite and non-offensive.
See, and I think kids should say fuck more.
I'm going to send you big chunks of text from articles from the 1910s that I was reading about Roscoe Arbuckle. So this first one comes from The Sun in 1917.
Should I read this aloud?
Yes, read it aloud.
And also, would you like me to read it in a normal voice or in a 1910s voice?
You know what? I think a 1910s voice could be fun.
Great. Fatty had been doing a scene for a new play, and he sighed as he eased himself into a chair. Says the writer in The Sun, after he sat down, he achieved the apparently impossible by crossing one leg over the other knee. And every time he got up and sat down, he did it again. Each time I saw the performance beginning, I secretly bet with myself that he couldn't make it. But I always lost. It was an acrobatic triumph, but it was also a sidelight on his character. For if there is one thing Roscoe Arbuckle has made up his mind about, is that he will not be the ordinary fat man. He won't sit like a fat man. He won't dress like a fat man. And above all, he won't depend on his diameter and phenomenal circumference to make people laugh. When he is out of the movies, he looks like a modern Beau Brummel under a magnifying glass. He has 15 pairs of shoes, but he sighed again as he declared he works so hard he never has time to wear any of them. His clothes are always immaculate. It sounds as if he gave a lot of thought to his personal appearance. He does, but it is for just one reason. There's nothing in the world so repulsive, he said, as a fat man who isn't well dressed. I kind of turned into JFK there.
But that quote is so sad.
It is, yeah.
I wanted to send you another quote too, just because I think that hearing famous fat people talk about their weight is so sad. And I'm gonna make you just listen to it because I just think it's so sad how he talks about himself.
All right. People ask me if I ain't afraid of getting thin. Great Scott! If I knew how to lose 150 pounds, I'd show them. I didn't choose to weigh 16 pounds when I was born. You said 13 earlier.
Oh.
Did he weigh 16 pounds?
The source that I read said 13, but he said 16. He might have been
okay.
he might have been exaggerating a tad.
Yeah. I didn't choose to weigh 16 pounds when I was born. I weighed 180 pounds when I was only 12 years old, but I didn't wake up in the night to tell myself how glad I was. Not on your life! I didn't want to be fat then, and I don't want to be now. And if I couldn't be funny without being fat, I'd get another job.
Also, as someone who is a developmental psychologist, 16 pounds at birth is crazy.
Aubrey and I both listened to a podcast called The Last Podcast on the Left. And one of the hosts, Ed, isn't he like America's biggest baby or like at least Florida's biggest baby?
I think he was.
Not like Ed.
Yeah, that's
like
canon.
Ed Lore. That he was a humongous baby.
Let's look up how much Ed Larson weighed at birth. Let's see. Yeah, okay. So he was 14 pounds at birth.
Oh my God. Okay. So I feel that perhaps Mr. Arbuckle, Mr. Roscoe, is embellishing the truth there for dramatic flair. But also, given how his father treated him as a baby, perhaps Roscoe had been given the impression that he weighed 16 pounds at birth.
And also, he was born in 1887, so he also just might have never seen his birth certificate.
And also, weight didn't exist then. We still were weighing people wrong. That's not true. I should not say that I have said before that I work in science on this channel, so I should not say things that are that false.
So as you alluded to earlier, one of the things that tends to overshadow discussions of Roscoe Arbuckle are the widely publicized court trials that he was involved in between November 1921 and April 1922 for the rape and manslaughter of actress Virginia Rappy. before we kind of get into this, I do just want to say there are entire podcasts who get into this case and the trials surrounding it. I was much more interested in thinking about what it means to be a fat man in media at a time when media is still relatively new. I will say that I've done a little bit of reading on this case. I have a pretty firm opinion on what I think about it, but also this was over 100 years ago. None of us really know.
So we're not gonna do White True Crime now? We're not doing My Favorite Murder?
My favorite murder. Oh, murderinos. Oh, don't get
Mm,
murdered.
stay sexy, don't get murdered. Be
Be
skinny.
skinty. So the facts of the case are that Virginia Rappy fell ill at a party that was hosted by Arbuckle at the St. Francis Hotel in San Francisco in 1921 and died 4 days later. A woman at the party named Bambina Maud Delmont accused
Sorry, Aubrey. Bambina Ma Del Mont! I need you to say it right.
Bambina Maud Delmont. Roscoe's life was also just full of people who had crazy names.
I think people's names were just more fun in the back in the day.
People's names were silly. I need to meet a woman named Bambina.
Bambina. You gotta go to New Jersey
Yeah.
for that.
So Maud Delmont accused Arbuckle of raping and accidentally killing Virginia Rappy by crushing her with his fat body. So,
You know, maybe it wasn't that he was too fat. Maybe it was that she was too skinny. Why does no one ever talk about that, huh?
because that's skinny shaming, and that's a federal offense.
You're right. I was on Tumblr when that discourse was happening.
So on Labor Day 1921, Arbuckle took a break from his film schedule because he had suffered second-degree burns to both ass cheeks, and he drove to San Francisco with his two friends, Lowell Sherman and Fred Fishback. And I'm sure you're wondering, what was the ass cheek accident?
That's exactly what I was wondering.
So his buttock accident was in Los Angeles, having his Pierce Arrow automobile serviced when he sat down on an acid-soaked rag in the garage. The acid on the rag burned through his pants down to his ass cheeks and caused second-degree burns.
So we're working on a video right now about how we don't super have to worry about acid rain anymore because we've done such a good job of dealing with the problem. But like if we stop dealing with the problem, like if the government rolls back EPA regulations, which definitely won't happen, then acid rain could become a problem again. Do we think acid rags are still a problem?
I mean, this is just such a 1920s thing where I'm like, what was the reason for having an acid-soaked rag in the automobile shop?
Well, now we have OSHA regulations, so there's less just like put your shit wherever you want because of people getting horrible burns, and they want to get rid of OSHA.
Yeah.
Anyway.
So because he got these second-degree burns on his ass cheeks, he was like, hey guys, I actually don't know if I want to go to San Francisco anymore, because imagine doing the drive from LA to San Francisco with second-degree burns on your ass. But his man, Fishbach, okay, I also want to say really quickly, some accounts spell this guy's name as Fishbach and others as Fishback. His Wikipedia says Fishback, so I'm actually just going to try to commit to Fishback.
That's two different guys, I feel like. Like, if your name is, his first name's Lawrence?
Yeah. Or no, it's Lowell.
Lowell.
Or no, it's Fred. It's Fred Fishback and Lowell Sherman are his buddies.
Cause there's like, hey yo, I'm Freddie Fishback. And then there's Fred Fishbach. So that's a different guy depending on if it's Bach or back.
We're going to go with Freddie Fishback on this.
All right.
So Roscoe's like, hey guys, I don't know if I want to make this drive. And Freddie Fishback says, absolutely not, Roscoe. You're coming on this fucking boys trip. And he secured a rubber padded ring for Arbuckle to sit on. And they made that drive up the coast.
Oh my God, he got him a pregnancy donut.
Yes.
He literally got him a pregnancy donut.
Yes. And the impetus, too, for why this trip was even happening was because Arbuckle's latest film was called Crazy to Marry, and it was playing in successful runs across the country. And this was basically hey man, you've been killing it, making all these movies lately, and every single movie you're making is making a fuck ton of money. Let's do some boys' night for Labor Day weekend.
I love the TV show Entourage.
This is Quite similar to Entourage.
This is the plot of like several Entourage episodes.
Freddie Fishback reserves adjoining rooms and a suite. So you've got room 1219, that's for Arbuckle and Freddie Fishback, 1221, and that's for Lowell Sherman, and then the suite in the middle in 1220 is the designated party room. So you've got this suite that's in the center, and then basically the two rooms on either side where the guys are going to sleep. Also, so interesting that Freddie Fishback is the one who pays for this trip, yet he's sharing the room with Roscoe Arbuckle, and Lowell Sherman gets his own room. I want to know how that dynamic was decided.
Maybe Lowell Sherman smelled bad, you know?
Because if I'm paying, I get the biggest room.
Yeah, but maybe they just loved each other. I don't want to make this gay, but maybe they loved each other.
So maybe they did love it. They were good friends.
Maybe they were just really good friends.
Mayhaps. So the next day, there are several women invited to the suite. We really only need to know about two of them, and one of them is aspiring actress Virginia Rappy. Some call her aspiring actress. I wouldn't necessarily call her that. She was in many films. She was in a relationship with a director named Henry Lerman, and she starred in many of his films, but most of those are lost media, and it's really impossible to know the amount of roles that she performed in for him.
That also feels like, in a lot of ways, trying to be like a very lawyerly and like PR tactic of being like this like young life crushed out thing. And obviously whatever happened is very tragic, but when you're in a murder trial trying to like garner sympathy for the victim in a way that also makes the accused look bad by being like, oh, like she was an aspiring actor, she was right on the brink of success, when like she may have already been successful and already gotten to do a lot of things in her lives, which doesn't make her death any less tragic, but it's just a very different thing from a PR perspective.
Right. And she was 30 in the 1920s. So obviously women
So she was an old hag.
she was used goods, as they say.
Oh, what is the word? Oh, spinster.
Spinster. So I do want to just give a minute to give a brief bio on Virginia. Virginia was born in Chicago on July 7th in 1891 to a single mother named Mabel Rappy. Mabel died when Virginia was 11, and Virginia was raised by her grandmother. At the age of 18, she started working as a commercial and artist model in San Francisco, and in 1917, she moved to LA, and she got her most prominent role in the film Paradise Garden. By all accounts, she was considered someone who really enjoyed partying and hanging out with actors and famous people. She was the longtime partner of this director, Henry Lerman, who had directed many films that Roscoe Arbuckle was in. Basically, Henry Lerman was a really prominent director at Keystone, which was the studio that Roscoe did like all of those little short cop films with before he sort of hit it big. So they had at least some kind of passing relationship with each other, Virginia and Roscoe, I mean. The extent of that relationship is somewhat muddled by all of the conflicting details around the case, but they knew each other before this. They had likely partied or at least been in each other's social circles before this. They were not strangers.
Okay.
And the other key woman who was at this party was our girl Bambina Maud Delmont, who was known...
Aubrey, say it right.
Bambina Maud Delmont.
Thank you.
She was known as Madame Black, and she was a known madam and blackmailer. Delmont basically would procure young women for parties where there were wealthy male guests, and those wealthy male guests would oftentimes then find themselves accused of rape and then were blackmailed into paying Delmont. This is where...
Interesting is all I'm gonna say.
Not relevant. It's not relevant to anything that happens later.
No.
One thing that is really unclear is what Delmont and Virginia's relationship was to each other prior to this party. Delmont goes back and forth on this many times. Sometimes she says that they had not known each other before the party. Sometimes she says that they met a few weeks before the party. Sometimes she says that they were close friends since childhood. Others in Virginia's life do not really confirm any of this, so that leads one to believe that they were likely not well known to each other if they were known to each other prior to this day. So on Labor Day, September 5th, 1921, Arbuckle awakes in the hotel and he finds there's a fuck ton of people around because Freddie Fishback and Lowell Sherman start inviting people over. He's walking around the party in his pajamas, bathrobe, and slippers. People make a big deal about this later on when the news cycle starts to pick up on this case. He's in his pajamas because his ass cheeks are burned, so he's not trying to wear tight pants when he's got burned ass cheeks. It's reported that he saw Maud Delmont and Virginia at this party and that he felt concerned because it was Prohibition time and these girlies were known for going to gin parties. So he's a little bit like, oh man, the cops are going to know that we're doing a party here because these girls are here. But then the drink and the booze start flowing, the music starts bumping, and Roscoe's not really focused on any of those worries anymore. Virginia was found seriously ill in room 1219, so that's Roscoe's room. We know this to be true. We know it to be true that she was at some point examined by a hotel doctor who concluded that her symptoms were caused by intoxication, and then he gives her morphine, and she's hospitalized 2 days later and dies 2 days after that. So these are like the facts. Some more of the facts are that Virginia did suffer from chronic urinary tract infections, which are really bad when you drink a lot, which by most accounts she was known to doing. So,
And this is like the morning?
yeah, so this is as soon as he wakes up. Most of this is happening. This is day drinking hours.
I see. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
All right.
So Roscoe's story is that he goes into his room to get dressed to go out for the day in the afternoon. And in the bathroom of his room, he finds Virginia on the floor and he thinks she is passed out drunk. Virginia's like, I'm really sick. I'd like to lay down. So he helps her get onto the bed. He leaves. He comes back a few minutes later. She's fallen onto the floor. He tells the others, and they call the doctor.
He was with other people between the time.
Yeah, so
Okay.
basically, Roscoe's account is basically, I was pretty much never alone with her, and people had eyes on me this entire party.
Okay.
Maud Delmont's story is that she saw Arbuckle and Virginia have a couple drinks together, and that she saw Arbuckle pull her into the adjoining room and say, I've waited for you 5 years and now I've got you. And then after 30 minutes, Delmont hears Virginia scream. So Delmont knocks on the door and kicks at the locked door when nobody answers. And then Arbuckle came to the door in his pajamas, wearing Virginia's hat cocked at an angle, smiling with his foolish screen smile, while Virginia was laid on the bed, sprawling and moaning. No one at the party substantiates Delmont's story. Pretty much everyone at the party substantiates Arbuckle's story. Arbuckle's story is basically, I was with people the entire time. There are some people at the party who are like, I didn't have eyes on him for some of the party, which I think makes sense because even in his rendition of the story, he's like, I'm going to go get changed to go out for the day. He sees her in the bathroom, helps her on the bed, leaves, comes back. She seems like she's just getting more ill. Then he tells everyone, hey, she's not doing so hot.
Yeah, that's tough. This is just like face value. I think the Delmont story is obviously sort of not true.
Yeah.
Am I going to sit here and say that like anyone can say what happened in that room between the two of them, even if they were alone only briefly? No, anything could have happened and like no one will ever know what actually happened. But I do think that Delmont is full of shit.
Yeah, so one thing that I think helps beef up the idea that Delmont was probably lying is that she sent telegrams to attorneys in San Diego and Los Angeles during the party. And those telegrams, I'm actually going to send you what the telegram said.
This is so tough. God, it's so annoying when I don't get to believe all women.
Maud Delmont makes it hard.
God damn it. Okay, let me get into a Bambina accent. We have Roscoe Arbuckle in a hole here. Chance to make some money out of him.
Yeah, so she sent that to different lawyers at this party while that was happening. Of course, somebody could make the argument she did witness some kind of sexual assault and wanted to capitalize on it. Some people would say she was probably fucking lying.
I mean, and there is there's oddly enough also two things can be true, wherein like she could have sent those things and he could have done something bad.
Yeah.
Like those two things could also be true. This is the whole problem with like these like sort of he said she said
Mhm.
trials is that like you're trying to establish one version of events and sometimes the answer can be somewhere in the middle.
Yeah. So Delmont tells the hotel doctor that Roscoe Arbuckle raped Virginia. The doctor says that he asks Virginia if she was sexually assaulted, and Virginia says no.
That's crazy.
Yeah. And the doctor says that he doesn't find evidence of rape. I have no idea what that would have looked like in 1921. So, grain of salt.
Well, I mean, they would have had sex to completion, there would have been evidence of sperm, if she would have had any bruising, things like that. Like, it would have been more like the physical markers that you can, like, see from sex/from assault.
Yeah.
And so, it would have been more of that and less like, I did a swab of for DNA evidence, like, 'cause that
Yeah.
didn't exist. But, like, you would be able to see, like, physical signs of a struggle or physical signs of at least, like, sex
Yeah,
occurring.
and there's no physical evidence of that assault, and that once again is discussed in all of the trials, that there's really no evidence that she
Yeah.
was brutalized. It seems quite clear that she likely died from peritonitis caused by a ruptured bladder. Yeah, it's really sad. I mean,
It sucks that this girl died, and it sucks that seemingly another person tried to capitalize on that for their own monetary gain.
yeah. So basically, just to do a little bit of a recap, right? So Virginia goes to this party. She has some kind of medical episode. The doctor does not diagnose it as a medical episode and says, "You're drunk. Here's some morphine. Just get crossfaded." And then 2 days later, she goes to the hospital. And then 2 days after that, she dies in the hospital because of this ruptured bladder.
I'm just thinking about the whole claim that she was crushed to death, and it's just like,
Yeah, we're gonna get there. We're gonna get there. So the day after her death, Arbuckle was arrested and arraigned on charges of murder and was held without bail. He was indicted by a grand jury on first-degree manslaughter charges on September 13th because
on what evidence? Oh my god.
so Delmont tells the police that Arbuckle raped Virginia, and basically the police say that they think that the impact of Arbuckle's body on top of Virginia caused her bladder to rupture.
I am not someone who has a lot of faith in our legal system in general. There is no evidence here.
Yeah, there's not. And at a press conference, Virginia's manager, Al Samancher, accuses Arbuckle of using a piece of ice to simulate sex with Virginia and claims that that led to her injuries. By the time this story hits the newspaper, the object evolves into a Coke or champagne bottle. So basically, this claim becomes that Arbuckle raped Virginia with a champagne bottle, which is insanely violent.
And did that evolve because the manager evolved the story or just because like the sort of yellow journalism press ran away with it?
It's the yellow journalism. So,
Okay.
which I mean, her manager's story is that he used a piece of ice to rape her, and then they just decide to roll with that and turn it
Yeah.
into a bottle. Basically, this claim is really dubious. Witnesses at the party testify that it was Delmont who rubbed ice on Virginia's stomach to ease her abdominal pain. Some say that Arbuckle was the one who rubbed ice on Virginia's stomach. Arbuckle himself, in his statement, says that he saw Delmont doing that, and that was the impetus for him to be like, what the fuck are you doing? She needs a doctor. And then he calls the doctor after seeing that. It is also likely that maybe he saw her putting ice on Virginia, and then while they were waiting for the doctor, he did that too. I mean,
Also, not to make a half joke here, but okay, so they're putting ice on her stomach.
Yeah.
How are we then traveling into the vagina in this story? Do they think that you fucked the belly button?
you might. So this
Okay.
story was adored by the press at the time, and it was quoted as being as exciting as the sinking of the Lusitania. The San Francisco Examiner ran an editorial.
Hey, isn't it funny that we don't even talk about that sinking anymore? Back in the day, that was actually a more significant sinking to people than the Titanic was.
Yeah, that's actually really interesting, and I didn't realize that because I saw several sources that use this quote of saying that it's bigger than the sinking of the Lusitania when Titanic also had happened at this point. The San Francisco Examiner ran an editorial cartoon titled They Walked into His Parlor, which featured a depiction of Arbuckle in the middle of a giant spider web with 2 liquor bottles in each hand and 7 women caught in his web. There were basically all these rumors about his sexual depravity that began to swirl. Arbuckle immediately turned himself into the police. He was like, I would like to help to resolve this matter. And he was charged with manslaughter and scheduled for trial that November. San Francisco District Attorney Matthew Brady saw this case as the perfect opportunity to jumpstart his career in politics, but he had some issues with this case, mostly because it all hinged on Maud Delmont, and she couldn't keep her story straight. And I don't mean she mixed up some of the minor details. She couldn't keep her story straight with whether she was a lifelong friend of Virginia or whether she had met her that day.
Yeah, like I said, I think it's very clear that Maud Delmont is full of shit.
Yeah.
I'm not comfortable fully like defending a man in Hollywood when it happened 100 years ago, you know what I mean?
No.
But I feel rather confident in saying good old Bambino was not batting 100.
Yeah. I did find this interesting quote during this time where there was this media circus from Minty Arbuckle. She wrote this in 1921 for Movie Weekly. And this is part of a much larger piece where she talks about defending Arbuckle. They had been separated at this point for 5 years. And when this comes out, she immediately jumps to his defense and is like, this is my guy. But I thought this quote was really interesting. So I'm going to have you read it.
All his life, Mr. Arbuckle has been embarrassed by his size. He has believed that women could not like a fat man, and for that reason, he has hesitated even more than might be natural about developing friendships among women. He is not the type of man who caresses a woman. If he likes a girl, he will tease her or make her presents or generally be nice to her, but he will never think of putting his hands on her. In fact, he carries it so far that it is almost an obsession.
I just think that this quote is so interesting. And like I said, I'm in no way trying to be like, there's no way that something, couldn't have happened. I just think that it's very telling that so many people come out to express that this is somebody who seems very gentle and kindly toward women. Even though Arbuckle is an alcoholic and many people attest to his drinking problems throughout his life, physical violence is never something that's mentioned. He was married 3 times. None of his wives seem to base their divorces on the grounds of cruelty. Both of his ex-wives list desertion as the reason for their divorce, which I think is just kind of old-timey for like, we are separated and are not together anymore.
Well, if he's an alcoholic and a movie star, like he's probably not a very present partner.
Yeah. So there's 3 trials total. The first 2 trials were hung juries and the third acquitted him. Delmont is never called to testify in any of these trials because
But she's the only what else are they using? This is what's boggling my mind. There is no evidence. Unless Aubrey is leaving out some serious details and has no journalistic integrity, get in the comments. There's no evidence. There is, I'm going to say it another time, they have no evidence that he did this.
Yeah, I mean, everything that I've read on this subject has made it pretty clear that her body did not show physical signs of being crushed to death. And if this is a trial,
he is also not big enough to crush her to death.
Right. Like what this trial essentially hinges on is this idea that Fatty Arbuckle or that Roscoe Arbuckle raped this woman and the weight of his body on top of her caused her to have a medical event that resulted in her death. And if one was crushed so much that their bladder ruptured, one would think that her body would show signs of being crushed. And that's not what her body looked like when she died.
That also feels like part of the change of the narrative to, instead of it being, I mean, at least in the news, about it being like changing to a third party object being the thing that is doing the assault, feels like a way to get away from the fact that there's not going to be physical evidence of the assault. But then that doesn't match up at all within what they're saying the actual cause of death was. Was there an autopsy?
Yeah, and the autopsy
Okay.
results are that she died of peritonitis.
So they have no evidence, and yet there's still 2 hung juries.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that I can express enough how much this story was covered by every news outlet, and
Yeah.
every news outlet just snowballed more and more graphic and really gross details about what they claim to have happened, because this
Yeah.
was an era in journalism where you just lied.
An inverse O.J. Simpson.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm open to other interpretations of this case. There's a podcast that I listened to that had much more of a, it is quite possible that he did this slant. I still think that the evidence that they present in that podcast is sort of dubious because it hinges on claims of other people. So,
Him being acquitted is correct because they do not have any evidence that actually links him to this crime. Whether I, as a private citizen, so if I was on the jury, I probably would have voted not guilty. As a private citizen, I can have the thought of given the next 100 years of history of men in the media, I'm not fully comfortable being like, well, there's no way this guy could have done that. Because yes, there absolutely is a way that a rich, powerful man would do this to a woman, obviously.
yeah.
But there is not enough evidence here to convict someone of a crime at all.
Well, right. And the narrative starts to come out that, oh, he's done this before. He's done this to so many people. Yet there's not any reports of other women coming forward in this way. And I'm not saying that that means, obviously, that it's completely impossible, but one would think that other victims, if they existed, would
Yeah.
potentially feel empowered to come out in this instance. But,
I also would maybe feel slightly differently about it if it was Virginia herself who was levying the accusation. But
that's how I feel.
it's not. She actually, from what you've said, said that this didn't happen, and then it feels like other people are trying to take advantage of it after she has died, which is horrible to her memory. Because she may have not even
Yeah,
wanted to pursue this, and now this is what her legacy is too.
right. And there are some people at the party who claim that they heard Virginia say, Roscoe hurt me. But also, once again, that becomes this did you hear that directly from Virginia? Did you hear that from Maud Delmont?
Also,
Who actually.
he could have hurt her and not killed her.
Right, exactly.
There's
Exactly.
there's so many different, again, I think oftentimes the problem with, as someone who is an enjoyer of a couple true crime podcasts, the problem that I think a lot of our bent, and because we live in a justice system that is guilty not guilty, we tend to
Right.
exist in this black and white zone where the story can be more complicated. And I don't think this story necessarily is as black and white as Delmont puts it. It might not be as black and white as, Arbuckle's recollection of it.
Right.
But there's no way to know that. But what feels very clear is that no matter what happened, the narrative that made it into the news is a crock of shit.
Right. So Arbuckle took the stand in his own defense in the first trial. Jurors voted 10-2 for acquittal. The prosecution tried him a second time, and the jury was deadlocked again. And then it was his third trial in March of 1922 when Arbuckle allowed his attorneys to call witnesses to basically do a character assassination of Virginia.
Ugh,
He had,
that
on
sucks.
principle, refused to do that in the first 2 trials because he said that it would be disrespectful to her memory to do so. But by the third trial, when he had spent more than $700,000 on his defense and his career at this point is presumed to be completely dead, he basically is like, yeah, just send in whoever. And these are people who testify that Virginia suffered from previous abdominal attacks, that she drank heavily, that she disrobed at parties frequently, that she was promiscuous. and they do the character assassination, and that
sucks too, because again, she didn't want this. She didn't want this trial.
Yeah.
Some fucking asshole named Bambina did. And like, not just blame Bambina, like also Virginia's manager with the fuck ass name. Like, she didn't want this. And so it is so horrific that the thing that actually got him acquitted was the destruction of this woman who did not want this.
Yeah. This woman who, by all accounts, was friendly and congenial to this man, and at the very least, if anything occurred at that time, she was not wanting to speak publicly about it.
She is, I mean, obviously she's the one who died, and so, but her dying, if we don't believe that he crushed her to death narrative, which I don't, is that she died of like a tragic medical thing at a young age, which sucks.
Yeah.
And then all of these people around her end up victimizing her again in her death by then like getting it to the point where like she has to be slandered in order to not send this man to jail. And like it should not have had to come to that, because again, these people have no evidence. But the fact that actually what convinced, let's say, 2 people to then go, oh, I guess we have to acquit him, was that they hate women more than they believe them is annoying.
Yeah, and I think that regardless of what anyone's opinion is about what actually happened in this case, Virginia Rappy is the victim.
Yeah.
Whether she was a victim of an actual assault, she was a victim of a character assassination and a victim of misogyny.
Yeah, and it's like, you know, you can make the argument that Roscoe ends up being complicit in that by allowing that to enter the trial, but like I also don't think he should go to prison because of these people also. And but it's like you have all of these lives that are ruined because fucking Bambina and whatever his butt manager doofus want to make money.
Yeah. So on April 12, 1922, the jury acquitted Arbuckle of manslaughter after deliberating for just 5 minutes. 4 of those minutes were used to prepare a statement of apology for his treatment by the justice system. And I'm going to send you the letter that they wrote.
5 minutes for a murder trial is crazy.
Yeah.
Acquittal is not enough for Roscoe Arbuckle. We feel that a great injustice has been done to him. There was not the slightest proof adduced to connect him in any way with the commission of a crime. He was manly throughout the case and told a straightforward story, which we all believe. We wish him success and hope that the American people will take the judgment of 14 men and women that Roscoe Arbuckle is entirely innocent and free from all blame. Yeah. I mean, again, no one can actually know what happened, but if we're going off the evidence that has been presented, he is not the villain here.
Yeah. Roscoe's career is forever overshadowed by this scandal. His films were banned by the motion industry at the behest of Adolf Zucker, who was president of Famous Players Lasky, and this ban was enacted by censor William B. Hayes. As a result of this, Arbuckle is publicly ostracized. If you're somebody who knows old Hollywood shit, yes, William B. Hayes is the guy who created the Hayes Code, which spelled out a set of moral guidelines for self-censorship of content in American cinema. Basically, films were based as fuck prior to the Hayes Code and had a ton of content in them that was really socially conscious and interesting and boundary pushing, and then they were all considered immoral when the Hayes Code came along, and that was how we got the stereotype of this clean-cut old Hollywood image.
And the other guy was named Adolf, which was going to be a very difficult name to have in about 15 years.
Yeah, Adolf, you gotta think about this whole cancel culture you're perpetuating, because first they...
And his last name is Zucker, so that's now, he got both names, because now he's been zucked too. That sucks, man.
First they came for the fatties, and I said nothing because I was not a fatty. Then they came for Adolfs, and I said nothing because I was not an Adolf.
And also, if that's true, a Nazi.
The ban was actually lifted after a year, but Arbuckle only worked sparingly through the 1920s. Eventually, he did work as a director under the pseudonym of William Goodrich. In 1932, Arbuckle signed a contract with Warner Brothers to star under his own name in a series of 2 six-reel comedies to be filmed at Vitaphone Studios in Brooklyn, New York.
Shout out.
These were 6 short films, and they constitute the only samples that we have of Arbuckle's voice. These shorts were very successful in the US, although when Warner Brothers attempted to release the first one in the United Kingdom, the British Board of Film Censors cited the now 10-year-old scandal and refused to grant an exhibition certificate. On June 28, 1933, Arbuckle finished filming In the Dough, the last of his 2-reelers, 4 of which had already been released at this time, and the next day he signed a contract with Warner Brothers to star in a feature-length film. That night, he met with friends to celebrate his first wedding anniversary to his 3rd wife and this new contract, and he reportedly said, "This is the best day of my life." That night, he suffered a heart attack and died in his sleep at the age of 46.
Damn.
The sort of epilogue to this is that Arbuckle's legacy in film is still often overshadowed by his court cases, which are considered the first real Hollywood scandal. One thing that I think is also very interesting is that films about Fatty Arbuckle are somewhat cursed. There's been attempts to make biopics about Roscoe Arbuckle, and well, I'll just walk you through it. So there's been 3 actors who have been considered for playing Roscoe Arbuckle. The first 2 are John Belushi and John Candy,
Yep.
who were all in talks to play Arbuckle, and then both died before the biopic was made. And the third...
Wait, can I guess? Was it Chris Farley?
Yeah. And before his death in 1997, because this is a segue, actor Chris Farley was signed on to play Roscoe Arbuckle in a film with Vince Vaughn as the co-star that was going to be written by McKenna's favorite, David Mamet.
I'm buying a gun.
But anyway, so this was going to be Chris Farley's vehicle into dramatic roles, and he was signed on to film and died before it could be shot. So, yeah, that's the story of Roscoe Conkling or Fatty Arbuckle. Any reactions?
If you were like me and you were like, I've heard this name before, but I don't know why. And you're also like me and you watch the television program Hacks. There is an episode of Hacks where Christopher Lloyd plays Roscoe Arbuckle's grandson because they're trying to get the rights to Arbuckle's story to make a movie out of it, but the person who owns it is his like eccentric grandson played by Christopher Lloyd. This is successful. Like they successfully get the rights. They're like going to do this screenplay written by Fatty Arbuckle's fictional grandson. I'm so curious if they're gonna do the thing where they have the guy who's supposed to play him die. He's like a rising up and coming comedian in the show. Like, I'm not talking about the actor who plays him, but like if in the show he will die before that movie actually gets made, since that's like a trope in real life.
Well, there is actually a movie that's going to be made about Roscoe Arbuckle, and it's the guy from the fucking what's the Clint Eastwood one about the like security guard at the Olympics? Yeah, it's whoever the guy who was in Richard Jewell is signed on.
Walter Hauser.
Wait, is he signed on to do Chris Farley or Fatty Arbuckle?
I think he signed on to do Chris Farley.
He is. He signed on to do Chris Farley. Yeah, no one has dared touch the Roscoe Arbuckle legacy yet. They're afraid to kill another man.
I think the last thing that I'll mention is just that the legacy of men being accused of doing bad things in Hollywood is complicated. Mm-hmm. We have a lot of examples of like men being totally fine after an accusation. We have examples of men being accused of things and being able to sort of like I think a lot about the Ryan Seacrest one, and like that went away so quickly that it never really got adjudicated in the public eye. And then you have sort of like the difference between like Jonathan Majors, who immediately like when he choked a woman, they were like, he's out. I mean, like obviously he could still try to make a comeback at this point. But then you also have like Chris Brown, who just won a Grammy Award. It's really complicated. I think I ultimately come down on the side that like this was a gross injustice perpetrated by the media, and that like Roscoe Arbuckle did not deserve any of what happened to him at the end of his life. And it sucks that he died before he was able to make a comeback.
Yeah.
I now have to admit to everyone at this juncture that I also don't know anything about Chris Farley, so Aubrey's also going to teach me about Chris Farley next week, which is funny because like I love SNL, and yet I just never touched the Chris Farley era, I guess.
No, that's the best era. Your homework is going to be to watch Tommy Boy, and next episode, Mackenna's going to give us a rundown of the major plot points of Tommy Boy.
It's not fair. You know that movie better than I guess I'll have just watched it, so I'll be fine.
Well, I'll have time too where I'm going to be freshly watching it as well. And it's also going to be a bit of a Tommy Boy reaction.
Okay, great. Oh, so we're doing there. What's that? Pretty Much It is like a thing where they like do commentary tracks to movies. So we're not going to do that, but that'd be fun.
I love MST3K. Yeah. Mystery Science Theater 3000.
Oh, yeah, that's good shit.
Riff Tracks is the best.
Well, Aubrey, it's so hard because the hottie of the week is obviously Mr. Arbuckle. The villain of the week is Bambina, not just because her name is Bambina, but for lots of other reasons.
I think there should be more people named Minty.
That's not her name. Her name's Minta.
Yeah, but Minty is such a cute little name.
Is Minty Gizmo a thing? Am I making up am I like implanting a memory into my own mind? No. Yeah, I am. Okay. All right. Never mind. I'm stupid. Goodbye, everyone.
Bye.
Have a question or a topic that you would like for us to discuss? Send us an email at informedattraction@gmail.com.